It's just unbelievable. There's just so much fish out there. Years ago, like when we first bought this boat in 1982, we used to leave Gloucester and we used to travel all the way down to Nantucket. From Nantucket, we used to go to Jeffrey's Ledge or Platts or whatever, and then come back home after 7, 8 days to get maybe 20, 30,000 pounds of fish. You know, I can get that right now in 2 hours without even traveling far. That's how much these fish have come back.
I think even as the abundances are going up, we're getting closer to the end of potentially unachievable rebuilding programs, so it keeps ratcheting fishing mortality down while the fish stocks are going up. And we complain about discards. Well, the fish are coming back at a very fast rate, maybe not as fast as Congress demanded that it does, but that's the problem. Fish are going up. Fishing effort, he keeps have to be cutting back, and fishermen are throwing fish overboard. So there are a lot of fish out there relative to what people have seen, but folks forget that they raised the targets as much as a factor of 4 and 5 when we started the rebuilding program 6 years ago.
No one in this port is saying that there shouldn't be constraints on fishing operations. But to this point, I mean, I honestly think that 2/3 of the fleet, what you see, the skeleton fleet that remains, I'd be surprised if 2/3 of what is left isn't gone next year.
Difficult, discouraging, tragic. Words that come to mind when describing the fishing industry in 2009. 3 Gloucester fishermen died on the job: Mateo Russo, John Orlando, and Jaime Ortiz. Hundreds more from Gloucester and all along the New England coast saw their place in the industry undercut by federal policies designed to shrink the size of the fleet. Salt to the wounds was the dramatic recovery of the stocks, finally, after more than 30 years of conservation.
It's like night and day. The stocks have come back, and that's where our frustration lies, is that the stocks have come back so dramatically, and we're seeing the benefits of all the conservation that we've taken upon ourselves and have been placed upon us, and it's just frustrating. We used to only go gill netting for 2 or 3 months during the spring of the year for flounders and some codfish, because it was basically the only time of the year that it was viable inshore. Now it's viable year-round, but of course we have all these limitations, so we have to, lease days and buy permits and everything else to try and remain viable.
When we first bought this boat, we were 5 guys.
Yep.
Now it's just me and my son.
Yep.
We travel an hour and a half out. We catch our limit in 5, 10 minutes. I can prove it through my logs,
right,
and boat tracks where they track us. And we come back to the dock with our limit in 10 minutes. I mean, we've gone 4 or 5 hours. We have no problem catching fish. I mean, we come back with fish all the time.
The uncertainty is at its highest. There are parts to be extremely pessimistic about and parts to be optimistic about, so it's tough.
The federal policy responsible for squeezing out fishermen is catch shares. The catch share system tells fishermen how much fish they can harvest from the ocean, and the portion is based on how much each fisherman has caught over the past 10 years. Picture it like a giant pie. The men who caught the most fish in the past will now be rewarded with a bigger slice.
The council over the years, especially when Phil Coates was the chairman of the New England Fishery Management Council, he used to tell us all the time, he says, "Hey boys, get off of groundfish and go do something else and let the fisheries rebuild." And I got to be honest and say a lot of guys did that. A lot of guys went shrimping, they went scalloping, they left the fishery for a little bit, or they went monking down south or whatever. And guess what? Now everything's changed, and for some reason the council maneuvered to go with this history thing. So all those guys that left or just took time off the fishery are now going to get nothing because of it. And those are the real guys that rebuilt the fishery. So the guys, even myself, that stayed in, that bought extra permits and fished harder, I got to be honest about it, are getting rewarded more than others, which I think is completely wrong.
To work this way, fishermen must join a cooperative or sector. Those who don't are mostly those who avoided heavy fishing in the past because they are given little chance to catch enough fish to keep their businesses going.
We're not supporters of catch shares or we called sectors IFQ, ITQs disguised as something else. I mean, so we've always said that, but when it was clear that the council and the government were going to put all of the resources for Amendment 16, shift away from things like the point system, which was what we had come up with, and say that we're just going to have time and resources to further develop the Day at Sea program. We knew that the Day at Sea program was going to be developed, into the ground, and there was this hidden or sort of not much talked about sector option, which we knew that a lot of folks were going to jump into and say that this is where they would hide from the Days at Sea program, which they knew was going to be designed to go down. We just said, look, if all the resources are going to go towards Days at Sea, but I know all of the real resources are going to go towards developing just a select few sectors, we wanted to have everyone in the fishery have that option. So sectors are an option.
So I think if anything's going to happen, guys are going to run out there and try to get their allocation of codfish or pollock and ensure that they can catch it before those small amounts of yellowtail or blackbacks will be caught up. And if those are caught up and you can't find an allocation of that particular species from someone within the sector, you're out of business. The sector's out of business. It's not just an individual thing. So I think in some ways there might be a pulse to go even quicker.
The thing about this catch share is that there's so much unknown things about it that we really don't know what's going to happen. How we're going to deal with it. We're trying to learn that now. I mean, we just this last year, we're trying to figure it out, and it seems like no matter what you do, we just can't figure it out until it happens.
The only protection potentially is sectors. The very thing that a lot of people are accusing of the problem is we have recognized them as possibly the only way in a very dangerous, ill thought out ITQ catch share program with the most lethal currency allocated of straight species specific quota. The only possibility we have is to surround each community with a sector veil and try to keep those communities to keep their quota among themselves and maybe pool capital, and pool information. So in a very dangerous, unprotected ITQ system, I believe sectors may be the necessary protection at this point.
The vice-squeezing fishermen is the Magnuson Act. Magnuson was first voted into existence in 1976, and it has been reauthorized and changed every 10 years. Magnuson dictated the recovery of the nation's fisheries inside the 200-mile limit, and now it requires that all stocks are rebuilt by 2014, even though the ecosystem never works that way.
We self-inflict wounds all the time in U.S. fisheries, and we've said right along that the Magnuson Law has a lot of great things in it, but I think that most folks don't understand that Magnuson Law set us up to fail. It pretends that we know exactly how far the stocks can go, all at the same time. It pretends to know exactly how quick we can do it, and it pretends to know that we know exactly how many fish there are in the ocean right this minute.